Hello and welcome into the Fog.net podcast. My name is Michael Swain, the Kansas beat writer for 24/7 Sports. Hope you're all doing well. We're recording this on Tuesday, July 2nd. I got a lot to talk about today. Obviously, high school recruiting will be a topic later in this episode of the podcast, but we're going to talk a lot about the beginning of talking season. Big 12 Media Days are next week. I'll be headed out to Las Vegas next Tuesday for the two-day event. KU will go next Wednesday, and it'll kick off what will probably feel like the longest 6 weeks for a lot of KU football fans that you've probably felt in a long time as KU gets ready for the 2024 season. On Tuesday, the Big 12 announced its preseason poll, its preseason all-conference team, and we're going to talk a little bit about that on today's episode. So let's start off with the preseason poll, which was released first on Tuesday. It's a sight to behold, I think, for probably a lot of KU fans, where KU was picked to finish fourth in the Big 12. It's the highest KU's been predicted to finish since 2009, when KU was picked to finish second in the North Division. It's the highest KU's been picked to finish since the conference went to the no divisions format. It's really interesting when you look back at what this poll has meant for KU. And for a long time, right, about 13 years, Kansas was picked consecutively to finish last in the conference. Last year, it was a little bit different. KU was picked to finish, I believe it was ninth in the conference, and around kind of a group of Oklahoma State and UCF is kind of that group where they're in. Well, this time it's a lot different for KU, where the Jayhawks got 5 first-place votes, so 5 media members picked the Jayhawks to win the conference this year. And for full disclosure, I don't do the media poll stuff. I don't consider myself an expert enough to even try and vote on this stuff, and I don't want to end up swaying some things that, maybe shouldn't go a certain direction. So for me, I don't do it. I think this probably is about what I was thinking. I thought third or fourth for KU is probably where they're going to end up. If you look at the top of the conference, Utah picked to win. Obviously, quarterback Cam Rising is back after he missed last year as he recovered from a knee injury he suffered at the end of the previous season. So Utah, obviously going to be a really popular pick for people to win the conference. K-State is second, and then Oklahoma State third. Obviously, Oklahoma State returns a lot of talent from their team. Last year, they've got multiple members on the all-offense team heading into the year. And obviously, Kansas State, Avery Johnson will be the quarterback there. Still some question marks, but it's still a talented team. And then you got KU and Arizona, which rounds out the top 5. And it's if you're to say, 3 years ago that Kansas would be picked to finish in the top 5 of a 16-team conference, I'm not sure how many people would believe you, but it shows a lot about where Kansas is at in terms of its trajectory, but also I think some of the respect that it's getting from people that cover the conference and cover other teams, where I think people see the talent that KU has going into this season and sees that KU is a team that can compete at the top of the conference and has the players to do so. What also is going to help is obviously the schedule, which I'm going to pull up a different graphic right here. If you look at the schedule a different way, which is through the lens of the poll, well, you really do see how favorable a conference schedule it is for KU. In terms of the top 5 teams picked to finish in the conference, if you take out KU, right? So technically top 6, KU plays K-State on the road and Iowa State at home. And then right after that, West Virginia picked to finish 7th, right? So out of the top, 6 teams in the conference, excluding KU plays 3 of them. All right. But then you look at the bottom of the conference, and then you really see where most of the schedule lies for KU. TCU ranked 10th, Colorado 11th, Baylor 12th, BYU 13th, Houston 15th, Arizona State 16th. So this is not a schedule for KU that you looked at last year, right, and said, hey, this is going to be, I think, a pretty challenging conference schedule, all things considered, when you look at Oklahoma State finishing towards the top of the conference, K-State finishing high up there, Texas finishing high up there. This is a much different situation, and I think there's a world in which KU could start the season 7-0, and you look at the schedule, and that's a great way to start your season, right? Obviously, Illinois week 2 is going to be a huge test for KU, But then you really look at it and say, okay, West Virginia on the road, that's going to be one of the other first real big conference tests for KU. And I think something that KU is going to have to contend with this season is the fact that now KU is getting back into that part of the schedule in terms of the timing of things when KU is going to play teams that they beat 2 years ago or last year. You think about West Virginia, KU going there, I would believe it would have been week 2 in 2022 that KU went on the road and won at West Virginia for the first time in program history. Well, some of those players are still at West Virginia, and obviously Neil Brown is still there, and they will want to get revenge on KU. So that's something they're going to have to contend with in some of these games. But broadly, the schedule for KU, and you look at it through the lens of the preseason poll, it's pretty favorable. And so for KU, you look at it, you say, okay, you win your games against kind of the bottom teams picked in the conference, right? TCU, Colorado, Baylor. I think BYU on the road will be a tough game, but Houston, Arizona State, right? Those should be wins. And then you look at the top of the conference and say, all right, can you beat Iowa State at home? Maybe, right? I think Iowa State will be a good team this year. It's not going to be an easy game, but I think KU can beat Iowa State. And then it comes down to, can you split your road games against West Virginia and K-State? I know a lot of KU fans would probably want to see KU beat K-State on the road and say, all right, West Virginia can beat KU on their own home soil. But I think if you look at it through that way, right, 9 games, you're saying 6 of them should be wins, 2 of them coin flips, 1 of them probably is a likely to win, should win, could win. Like, that's a really good way to put yourself in a position to play for a Big 12 title. And so I think 7-2 in the conference definitely is on the table for KU. 8-1, I think, is probably maybe even on the high end. Undefeated, I'm not sure if I'm going to be predicting that when I do my game-by-game predictions later this summer, but I think it's one of those things where you look at the schedule and it just is super favorable. And you got to think, too, there are 2 bye weeks this year. And so KU does play Iowa State. I believe it's after their second bye week. So that could also help KU in that game. So overall, look, I think if you're going to draw a cross section here and say, talented team meets light schedule, like KU is at kind of that perfect intersection, I feel like, for this year. So obviously that's going to be something that's going to go in KU's direction. And obviously you still got to play the games, right? And I know Lance Leipold, when we talked to him at Big 12 Media Days, is going to be saying a lot of that, right? If you don't focus game in, game out on your task at hand, you're going to get caught. And we've seen KU sneak up on teams, right? I think about 2022, KU playing West Virginia, sneaking up on them a little bit. I think, right, that's not going to happen this year. KU's going to get the best shot from a lot of teams, and they're going to have to be focused week in and week out on doing the right things. So looking at the all Big 12 teams, or team, I should say, it is crazy, I will say, that it's a 16-team league, and there's still only 1 preseason all Big 12 team. Feels like there maybe should be 2, considering the talent in the league, and you're thinking about guys getting left off. And I pull up the offense here, and I think the most notable guy to be left off is Devin Neal. I was a little bit surprised to see Devin Neal is not picked as a preseason all Big 12 at running back. Obviously, Ollie Gordon always going to be picked in the preseason team, but you look at who the competition is, right? Taj Brooks from Texas Tech. He had a great season last year, a great season, over 1,600 yards. But he had a lot more touches than Devin Neal. Devin Neal was in the high 200s. Taj Brooks was in the low 300s. So if you want to look at the efficiency numbers, Devin Neal was more efficient than Taj Brooks last year. And if you would like to go by what the coaches say, the coaches picked Devin Neal as the first team all Big 12 running back last season. Now, what's my take on this? Well, I think there is a reason why I will put a lot more stock in the end of season coaches, all Big 12 teams, than I will with the media ones, because you kind of have an idea of how this works, right? You scan over teams, you look at the total numbers. The total numbers are going to favor Taj Brooks because he got more touches. And so if you look at the efficiency numbers, scoring touchdowns, which is kind of important, Devin Neal had 17, Taj Brooks had 10. Again, with less touches. So, look, I could probably make a bigger argument about this, but it doesn't really matter at the end of the day, right? I think for Devin Neal, it's going to be a situation where this is going to add some fuel to the fire for him if he wasn't already motivated enough. His last season in Lawrence, the opportunity to compete for a Big 12 title, and make himself a lot of money potentially, right, in the NFL heading into his professional career. Well, now this will probably add some more fuel to the fire in the last few weeks of the summer training that the guys are doing. Now defense, this was no shock, I don't think, to see KU get two players on the All Big 12 defense team, and that is Melo Dotson and Kobe Bryant. I think that's a slam dunk. Anybody, I think, who watches the conference knows that those two are some of the best cornerbacks in the conference. Obviously, Travis Hunter is an insane player. He's the preseason Defensive Player of the Year pick. Again, if I did the polls, he would have been my pick for the preseason Defensive Player of the Year. He is just a great football player. Really excited to watch him this year. But for Kobe and Melo, I think Kobe's got the chance to do something really special. Last year, he became the first Jayhawk since Aqib Talib to be a first-team All Big 12 selection on defense in back-to-back years. He's got the chance to do that again this year, and it's going to be really fun to watch and see how he has developed over the last 12 months. You think about the amount of reps he got last year, how durable he was last year, and then you add in someone new with DK McDonald coming in to be the cornerbacks coach. He's got plenty of NFL experience. Are there little tips and tricks that maybe he could give a Kobe Bryant to allow Kobe to take his game to another level? Maybe. And I think for someone like Melo Dotson, he's getting some recognition that I think he probably was overlooked last year. I believe he was only a honorable mention All Big 12 selection at the end of last year. I think he should have been much better. I think playing alongside someone like Kobe is not going to lend itself to Melo looking like he has guys on an island, because teams are going to pick on one guy to throw at, and they picked Melo to throw at. And so he got a lot more reps. I believe it was like 2/3 as many passing attempts towards him than it was Kobe on the Pro Football Focus numbers. Like, he was getting thrown at a lot. And I think he did a really good job, all things considered. So a great recognition for both of them. Really excited to talk to Melo at Big 12 Media Days. He will be one of KU's representatives there. The other defensive representative at Big 12 Media Days next week will be Jeremy Robinson, the defensive end entering his senior season. He's someone that it's really cool. I remember 2 years ago at the start of fall camp, Lance Leipold talked about wanting Jeremy to be a more vocal leader and be more vocal just around the team, because he was a bit of a quiet guy early in his KU career, and he has developed into that. And for me, being around practice, I remember at the spring showcase watching Jeremy, who did not go through spring practice because of an off-season surgery he had. He was helping a young guy like Takaius Brinkley, a true freshman early enrollee, during one-on-ones. Dak took a couple reps, went back. Jeremy is there helping him work on some stuff. I think that's really cool. So obviously Jeremy will get the chance to talk a little bit more at Big 12 Media Days next week. On the offensive side, obviously Devin Neal will be there. He is a veteran of Media Days. It'll be his third time there. Lots to talk about with him, I think, just in terms of the broader program, how things have changed, his own expectations, obviously being left off the first team or the preseason All Big 12 team. And then Jalen Daniels will be there. He was not made available to reporters during spring practice, so it'll be our first chance to talk to him in a more in-depth setting, since I think the last time he talked would have been September when KU beat BYU. So look, there's a lot to talk about. We'll have a podcast out after Wednesday night, or we'll do it on Wednesday night, where we'll talk a little bit more about what we heard from the players, Lance Leipold, things like that. So I'll let you know before we get into this recruiting stuff, we do have a sale going on. If you are not a VIP member, you can try it out, take a little test drive. It's $1 for 1 month. Basically, you sign up, say you sign up on July 3rd. That'll get you through to August 3rd, which will get you, I would say, probably about 3-4 days into fall camp. You can see the coverage we're doing, the insider stuff we're providing to subscribers. Decide if you want to keep going. And if you do know you want to sign up, you can go for the full year, get 50% off, less than $5 a month for the next 12 months. You get all sorts of KU football stuff, behind-the-scenes coverage for football, behind-the-scenes coverage for basketball, and obviously all the recruiting stuff you can handle. And we got a lot of recruiting stuff, and it's been a busy month, and there's still a little bit of ways to go for KU in this 2025 class. Still some needs to get filled, and so we'll obviously have you up to date with all of our coverage for VIP subscribers, so make sure you are giving that a try. And as always, really appreciate the support. It really means a lot to myself, And I know, obviously, we hope we provide some great coverage for y'all. So let's transition to the football recruiting side of things. We've got a lot going on. It's been a busy month. I know the last time we all spoke, it would have been right after KU's really big weekend. We caught up on a lot of those guys at that point in time, right? It was, guys like Josiah Hammond, Adrian Hawley, Garrett Martin, Brandon Schmelsley, guys like that. So we've talked about them. We won't go super in depth on anybody in particular this time, outside of maybe one guy. But I want to talk about kind of the top of the class, how things are looking right now. And the way things have changed with the recruiting calendar is June is a big visit month, and July turns into a big commitment month, where the first kind of 2 weeks of July are really the times when guys make their big decisions and where they want to go play their college football. At this point in time, KU's got 14 guys committed. The class ranks number 54 overall. In the 24/7 Sports team rankings, that takes into account the 24/7 Sports composite ratings, which factors in, Rivals, On3, ESPN, and 24/7 rankings. So overall, you look at the class, 14 members. The top of the class, I think it looks pretty good, in my opinion, right? You've got someone like Juju Marks, who KU was able to land, formerly of St. Thomas Aquinas in Kansas City. He has now moved to Olathe South. He's an offensive tackle with the long offer list, a guy that has the talent and the natural ability that got programs like Alabama, Auburn, Notre Dame, Oklahoma. I could go on and on. Basically, think of a big-time college football program, a historic college football program. They offered Juju. They saw the talent, and KU was able to get him on board. They were the only visit that Juju had at the start of June, and then got him committed. I think you look at him, a guy that's got a basketball background, 6'6", way more than his 260-pound listing. I'd guess probably closer to 280, depending on, where he's at in his offseason program. But he's someone that I think has all the natural traits and abilities, a really long wingspan. I believe it's a 6'11" wingspan, maybe a little bit more than that. A lot of natural traits that you like to see. Not quite a 4-star, but the highest 3-star rating 24/7 Sports gives out at an 89. So I think that's a good start at the top of the class. And then you go one spot down, and it's David McComb. And I had the chance to watch David throw at one of KU football's camps in June. Look, I mean, he passes the eye test. You see him walking around, and he looks the part. I think he'll have to put on some weight in college, as everybody does, right? That's not a big surprise. I'm not breaking any news here, but watching him throw specifically on the run, I love the zip he has when he's throwing the football. I think he's underrated at an 88. I think he should be in kind of that 90, 91 range. You look at the way he tested athletically at the Elite 11. He was the best athlete at the quarterback position at the Elite 11 in Texas. And if you follow high school football recruiting, right, Texas is one of the big three in terms of the states where a lot of the top players come from. And so the fact that David stood out in that setting athletically is a huge, huge plus for KU. And I think it's really cool, too, that a lot of guys do track, right? Isaiah Marshall had great track times doing sprints. Well, David actually did throwing, where he did shot put and discus. He taught himself over the winter and had a really good junior season on the track. So really interesting. I think he's someone that, look, 88 rating is good, but you look at the size, right? A little bit over 6'3". You look at the way he throws the football. You look at the athleticism profile. I think he's a 4-star. And so that's just my opinion on him. You work your way down. Malachi Curvey and John Kelly are next to round out kind of the top 4. Curvey is a linebacker from Iowa, about 6'2", 6'3", probably about 215 pounds, but he's a great athlete. And I really, really liked watching his tight end tape. You see how fluid of an athlete he is moving on the football field. You see it when he's playing linebacker and he's pursuing the ball carrier. So I think he's got the traits that KU looks for at the linebacker position. And then John Kelly, look, physicality, you watch him run on his tape. He's a tall guy, 6 foot. He's got some good long speed. I think short area burst will be something, Matt Gildersleeve will work on at KU. But I think in terms of, you look at the top end of the class, right, I think it's some really good players who have the traits and ability that KU looks for at each position. One guy that KU did also get from their first recruiting weekend of the month is Joseph Skipworth, a 6'5" tight end from Milton, Florida, which is up kind of in the panhandle of Florida. I'm really high on him. And you look at the tape for him. I don't have the clips here for folks watching on YouTube, but he really, really is a good athlete. And I think we're seeing something with Jeff Grimes on the recruiting trail where he is recruiting players at the tight end position that fit more of the mold of being kind of your bigger wide receiver who is growing into a tight end rather than maybe your bigger, thicker tight end who's good at blocking, but you need to work on receiving with. I think it seems like he's leaning towards the talented receivers that you can add weight, teach them to block, than the bigger guys who you got to teach to run routes and receive. I think that's just something that I'm picking up on looking at the guys who KU's been involved with since Jeff Grimes was hired. Now, you look at Skipworth, right? Really good height, 6'5". He on his tape lines up a little bit more as a wide receiver, does come into the box and play, or not the box, but plays as like an attached tight end at times as well. So he will be someone that probably will need to get used to playing against defensive ends in the college level. That might take a little bit of time, but I think in terms of just overall ability, I think he's got those traits again that the KU is looking for at the position. So those are kind of my thoughts on a couple of those guys. I think if you want to talk about what's next for this class, 14 players, ideally, I think 17, 18 would be the number for KU. That's been the case for a while now. We've mentioned it to VIP subscribers countless times. And so you're probably thinking, all right, well, KU's at 14. What's next? Well, I think first and foremost, getting a third high school wide receiver is going to be a huge key for KU. There are still some guys that visited KU in the month of June that still have not decided. You think about Muiz Tunkara from Texas, a wide receiver. He's deciding between KU, Arizona, Wisconsin. There is Jalen Cooper, who is from down in San Antonio. He's got, Baylor, SMU, K-State, KU, and Texas A&M on his list. Guys like Evan Haynes and Tavian McNair also visited KU. Those guys are still undecided. And then KU still trying to flip Isaiah Mosey from Oregon. He plays at Lee's Summit North in the Kansas City area. His dad, Jamar, was on staff there, or was the head coach there, is now on staff at UCF. He comes from a really talented high school, and I think KU is still trying to work their best to get Isaiah Mosey to flip his commitment from Oregon to KU. Look, we're talking about Oregon here, so I'm not sure if you can ever say that KU is going to be a favorite to flip someone, but they're going to try and see how it goes and may go into the season. So wide receiver is one position. Offensive line is another one. KU has two offensive linemen committed in Juju Marks and Anderson Kopp. Anderson Kopp is from Arizona. His dad, you might remember, played at KU. So he's got Jayhawk blood. He's a legacy recruit. So KU has two offensive linemen committed. Sounds like one more offensive lineman would be in the ideal scenario for KU. And then it kind of comes down to that last spot. Is it going to be like a linebacker? The board there is a little bit different, not as clear, right? A lot of the guys that KU had on the board going into the month have committed elsewhere or have eliminated KU. Someone like Bryson Williams, KU recruited as a safety. He's got kind of that overall athletic ability where maybe, look, KU's got that kind of hawk position, the hybrid spot that a lot of schools have. Could he fit there? Maybe. He's someone that still has not committed at this point in time. And then maybe it's a linebacker. Maybe it's, KU goes and gets another tight end in this class. There's still some other possibilities. So there's definitely still some stuff to keep track of heading into the fall. Now, we're in a dead period in July. And what will happen is at the end of this month, there's going to be a 1-week period before the start of preseason camp where high school recruits or anybody can take an unofficial visit to a school. In the past, we've seen KU host the next class juniors for visits. Think back to last, it would have been late July. David McComb committed after taking another visit to KU in that 1-week kind of visit period. So sometimes it's more, juniors, guys that are about to start their junior season. We'll have to see if KU decides to bring in any guys that are heading into their senior season who would be 2025 prospects in for that weekend. But still a lot to go on. We're going to keep you updated on fog.net. I'm sure I probably forgot somebody. I'm doing this off the top of my head here. But yeah, that's what I've got in terms of the podcast. Thanks as always for listening. I want to do a quick little update to keep you all in the loop on everything going on with Kansas football. I'll be at Big 12 Media Days next week. Like I mentioned, we'll get you guys a podcast, probably another stand-up video from Media Days as well, covering some of the bigger topics of the day. I'm really excited, guys. We're getting into talking season. We're going to do a lot of talking, going to do a lot of typing and writing about the football season coming up. It's going to be an interesting camp to see some guys that are going to step up. Obviously, a lot of guys that we know about. You think about the returning players on offense and defense, but this is going to be a really important camp for KU, for players that are going to try and springboard themselves onto the two deep, the fringes of the two deep, with the hopes of then next spring catapulting themselves into being in contention for a starting role in 2025. So it's inside football. It's stuff that's not going to maybe impact KU in 2024, but if you think about a long-term trajectory of a program, right? EA college football is coming out and everyone's going to start their dynasties, right? The pipeline. How important is it to recruit, have those players coming through so that when those seniors graduate, you've got other really talented players coming through, right? That's what I think this camp is going to be really important for. So those are some of my thoughts. Again, make sure you're checking out the website every day, daily content, football, basketball, recruiting. We got you all covered. Make sure you're checking out the site. Check out the sale as well, $1 for 1 month of Fog.net VIP access. Make sure you're liking the YouTube videos. You're subscribing to the YouTube channel. If you're listening on podcasts, leave us ratings, reviews on your platform of choice. Those always go such a long way in helping us reach a lot of new people. So, hey, thanks as always for listening. We'll talk to you all again next week.